Hey everybody, welcome. What is today? 18 May 2021. We are live, and I just want to say hello to everybody that's going to be joining on here. Uh, as you know, I do this every Tuesday and Thursday now, and you never know what I'm going to talk about. I don't even know what I'm going to talk about. In fact, I was trying to come up with a subject for today. I was just, kind of a little lost on what I was going to talk about. And all of a sudden, I've been doing a lot of reading lately. Again, I go kind of in spurts. I'm always reading, but sometimes I go in a little bit heavier. And I've read a couple of really great books recently. And so I thought, what the heck? Let's just talk about why reading is so important. And I was like, well, I probably only got about 10 minutes worth of stuff to talk. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to have to race through this in order to cover everything I was able to come up with in regards to reading, why it's important, what we benefit from it, how it hurts you by not reading. And one of those major ways is in your mental attitude, your mental development. As we age, it can affect us in that negative way as well. So as you're coming on, I welcome you. As always, if you wouldn't mind, throw in the comments, hashtag live, or if you're watching the replay, hashtag replay. And then we just love having a discussion going in the comments section. Again, while I'm doing the live, because of the way my setup is right now, my wife is not here still. I'm unable to respond to you while we're doing the live, but believe me, I will afterwards. So I see, but we got a bunch of people joining right now, so I really appreciate it. Hello, Danya, good to see you. Oh my God, and speaking of Danya, this is so weird. All right, so I came up with this subject while I was out and about today, and I get home and I see Danya had done a live earlier today, and you're not going to believe this. Danya did it on reading. I'm like, oh my God, talk about telepathy and whatever, the universe working in strange ways. I was totally freaked out, and she did an amazing job. I encourage you to go check hers out because she kind of covered things differently than I'm going to cover them today, and she had some really, really great stuff. So anyhow, all right, let me dive into this because, like I said, all of a sudden I'm like, I got a lot of stuff to talk about here. And one of the things is, yeah, great, Danya. One of the things is 43 million American adults possess a low literary skill. You understand, this is 2021, right? That to me is unbelievable. I mean, we have libraries that are free, anybody can access. So somehow, we are not putting enough emphasis in this country on reading and the importance of reading. All right. And it is so, so important. 15 to 45-year-olds, people aged between 15 to 45-year-olds, spend 10 minutes or less a day reading. Okay. Now, I tell you what, I mean, if you're on social media, you're probably reading maybe a little bit more, but that's not the type of reading necessarily we're talking about, right? 27% of all adults did not read a book in 2018. I find that actually pretty remarkable. That's saying that 63% of Americans, or 73% of Americans, excuse me, read a book in 2018. I just find that really hard to believe. I just do, because I can tell you of the conversations I have with people, most people are not reading, all right, are not reading a book. 44% high school level or less, people that have a high school education or less, 44% did not read a book. That I can really believe. But get this, those that have a college degree or higher, 92% did. So that really kind of surprised me as well, because I know when I was done with college, I didn't want to have anything more to do with the reading, right? 6 additional minutes of reading a day can significantly improve your kids' reading performance. Children who read at least 20 minutes a day are exposed to almost 2 million new words or additional words or words in general per year. So you're stimulating their growth. Actually, just reading to your kids, this is somewhere else down here, there it is, reading your kids increases the activation in certain brain areas. So again, it's so important. When you think about it, when you're reading, you have to take into account, you're also not only just getting in the author's head or the author's inviting you into his way of thinking or her way of thinking, but you're also having to create images. Whereas if you're watching TV or you're, looking at your phone and that kind of thing, that or watching a movie, you don't, the creativity is being done for you, right? But in reading, you have to do it. So that's just one of the many areas of why it's so important to you. Reading could help mental decline. Here you go. Woohoo! Reading could help mental decline in older aged people up to 32%. All right. So maybe a lack of reading is actually affecting our overall mental health as we age, right? 32%. I was really surprised by that one. Reading increases emotional intelligence. No kidding. And consequently, career outlooks. You know, you've heard that. I don't know, maybe you haven't, but there was a term running around a while back calling about dumbing down America. Well, I believe part of that dumbing down America is this lack of interest from Americans wanting to read. In fact, you want to know how bad it is? Let me find it on here. I'll just bring it up right now. America ranks 125th out of 194 nations in terms of literacy rate. That's how bad it is here in the United States. That's pretty pathetic. I did see another stat that showed us ranked 28th. Who's the top 10 countries? India, number one. They spend over 10 hours a day reading, or 10 hours a week, reading. Thailand, China, then the Philippines, Egypt, the Czech Republic, Russia, Sweden, France, and Hungary rounds out the top 10 nations as far as reading goes per cap for their nation, right? So, I mean, we're not even close to the top 10. I mean, we're to be ranked at 125th out of 194 nations says something really seriously is wrong in our country, in my opinion. There's been a decline in reading from 23 to 17 minutes per day on average, and pleasure reading, you know, a great book like this, which I'm going to talk about, pleasure reading has plummeted from 28 to 19%. Over 80% of teenagers don't read for pleasure on a daily basis. In terms of, we just said that, reading to your kids, we did that one. This was a good one, okay? Exposing kids to ebooks increased average reading levels up to 8.4 months. Now, I'm not a big fan, I don't have my iPad here, I'm not a big fan of ebooks, although I do have ebooks on my phone, and sometimes I'll do that, especially when I was flying with Southwest Airlines, because it allowed me, while I was sitting with windfall time, just wasted time, I would open up my ebook and I would start reading that, right? Audiobooks is another way to go too, but this is interesting. Exposing kids to ebooks increases average reading levels up to 8.4 months. And those who thought reading was difficult, these kids in this study, before being a part of this study, they lowered the difficulty level of reading from 28 down to 16%. In other words, reading became easier for them. Not only that, they enjoyed it more. It jumped from 10 to 40% of the kids that were involved in this study about ebooks. Their enjoyment for reading jumped from 10 to 40. So that behooves us as parents, as educators, teachers, or wherever it may be, youth groups, however we can expose children to reading. It is imperative that we do so to not dumb down America anymore or any further, right? Okay, so reading 30 minutes per week produces life satisfaction, all right? And it's just going to improve your life in all different ways. All right, so enough on the stats. What does this all mean? Here's what I like to do. I got started. I was not a reader, as I mentioned, 20 years ago or so, when I met my mentor for the first time, Mr. Brad Hager, and I started learning about personal growth. It took me 5 years to get to that point of enjoying reading. Literally, I'm up for 5 years. I forced myself to learn how to read again and to really get the most out of the book. So I've got a bunch of examples sitting here in front of me, ones that I have recently finished in that, but I wanted to give you an idea what's a good method to read or how to read a good book. And we're going to talk a lot. Most of what I have here is personal growth type of books. But I do have a pleasure book as well, right? Because that's important to also build a brand. I will tell you what, I cried my eyeballs out reading this book recently. I've written about it a little bit, and a lot of people commented about how much they love this book. Holy cow. If you're looking for a really good book, especially if you're a dog lover, I highly recommend this book. It is absolutely amazing. I tore through this thing in 2 days, and but anyhow, whether it's a fiction or nonfiction book, this is obviously a fiction book. Most of my is in nonfiction. What I always do, and Don, you mentioned this too, I always date and sign the book. And then I will sometimes, because I did this one so quickly, I normally will date it, sign it, and then when I finish it, I'll date it and sign it again. This one I just got one signature in. Fantastic book. This is a one of the personal growth books, right? This is the John C. Maxwell's Developing the Leaders Around You. I'm in business, so I've mentioned before, developing the leader within you, developing the leaders around you, and then the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. All right, those are three fantastic books. If you're in any kind of leadership management position, highly encourage you to read all three of those. But as you can see, I've read this multiple times, so I write down a little bit about what I'm reading. A lot of times I'll write down what's going on in my life at the time of reading this particular book. All right, that serves almost like a diary. So when I come back to it, I can see how much I've grown since the last time I've read it. I'll also write down, this book is not a great example. Some books I'll have this completely filled up of significant pages or pages that had significance to me. And then in the margins, I'm always reading with a red pen. I sometimes will make it a red flare pen, but oftentimes this is my favorite pen, these Pentels Energels. You can get them on Amazon. They're a little bit more expensive, but I'll tell you what, they write beautifully. And that's what I will often use. But then if I'm reading at different years, what I've gotten in the habit of doing now is putting it in different colors so that I can tell that, like, let me show an example. I don't know if you can see this, but here it's got red, that's from another time of reading, and then blue, that's from my more recent time. Because it's amazing how, even though I had read this book twice before, now on my third reading, I'm finding other things that I'm highlighting because I've evolved. I'm at a different stage of life myself. This is one of my all-time favorite books. This is just a little paperback thing. You can put it in your pocket, carry it around. I used to have this in my flight bag. I would pull it out constantly while I was flying. There's all different ways to read this book. I've talked about that before. I'm not going to get into it in this one right now. If you've never read it, As a Man Thinketh, it's free as a PDF file. You just Google it. You can download it for free, or you can buy the book. It comes in a nice little hardcover book too. I highly encourage this book. To me, is the beginning of personal growth. This was written in the late 1800s. It's by a gentleman, James Allen. And it is absolutely phenomenal. And this book I have read, I don't even know how many times. I only got it written 4 times in here, but believe me, I've read it a lot more than 4 times. And it's got more underlines than most of the other books that I read. Okay, so from the large to the small to the deep, The Divided Mind by John Sarno. Amazing book. Let's see. And then we've got, this one is kind of a really interesting book from somebody I saw on Amazon, on Facebook. Andrea Waltz, and she encouraged me to read it, and I did. And look at how thin that is. Really easy book to read, right? But it was fantastic. And I even put down what a fantastic little read. I've incorporated a lot in from that book. Then you got the big, thick, heavy stuff that I'm reading as well. Thomas Trowerd, again, an author. His first book was written in 1915. I love reading books that are dated, that are older. Think and Grow Rich is obviously one of the staples in business or entrepreneurship. That was written and published in 1936. But it actually comes from The Law of Success from Napoleon Hill, which is a much larger book than this. It is the Bible of personal growth because it is so in depth. But anyhow, so I like a little bit of everything there, right? And then recently, this book right here, Escaping the Fog. In my past, in my book, my personal book, my Discovering Your Authentic Truth, which is a little bit a heavier read or thicker read. It's not heavy read. It's actually easy read. It's just a little bit longer because I'm telling a very important story throughout this book, and I want the reader to really ingrain the information. So this book, this author actually commented on one of my posts, and he mentioned, or somehow we came across each other on Facebook, right? And he mentioned that he had just written a book, and it was a post on he shared with me, and I'm like, wow, that sounds pretty great. I'm going to go ahead and get it and read it. So here's another thing I encourage you to do. When somebody recommends a book to you, get it, all right? And then read it, not just buy it, but actually read it. It's very rare if somebody recommends a book that I have not read that I will not purchase and read. And it is so easy to do on Amazon. Somebody recommends a book, bam, I do it. And then I will send them a picture letting them know that I just bought their book because I'm actually very interested in reading. And I got to tell you, this book, Escaping the Fog, this is a book about a man's journey through alcoholism. And I was starting to say that in my book, I talk about a lady that deals with alcoholism. I've dealt with several people in my lifetime with alcoholism. It's a very, very challenging disease because it's always there, right? I know Amy Ariel's on here on Facebook, and she's talking about, there's another lady that's always talking about and promoting that, their length of time in sobriety, because it's a challenge, all right? So this man's journey was very, very fascinating. And I got to tell you, if you know anybody like that, then I would encourage this book. It's an easy read, but the way that he tells his story is absolutely riveting. So I encourage that. The Power of Now, we've talked about this a couple times. You can see this is a good example of me writing in here different stages of my life of where I'm at. This is a really deep thinking book. This book will get you to think deeply, right? And then this is the book I'm reading right now. Rob Schallenberger and I, we flew F-16s together. Him and his dad, they started their business, Becoming Your Best, and they've been very successful with it. It's personal growth. They've been with the Dallas Cowboys. They've been all over the world with different business coaching and stuff like that. And this is their latest book. It officially goes on sale, I think, tomorrow on Amazon. And he gave me an advance copy, and I just started it today because it's next in the queue, right? So I'm really excited about that. What do you get out of reading? You get a conversation with the author. I'll tell you what, when you read my book, you're gonna feel like you and I are literally sitting next to each other on an airplane, because that's the style that I wrote it. I wanted it to be in a conversational style so that it wasn't a textbook on NLP and communication and everything else. I wanted the information to be really deeply ingrained into the reader's mind so that they can get even more out of it, all right? So it's a conversation with the author. It's also about learning, right? I've given you a plethora of examples here of different types of books where you learn. When you learn, you actually activate your mind in other ways that you normally otherwise wouldn't, right? Life experiences. Think of the wisdom. I mean, okay, this book is a culmination, not just of my few years or 4 years working with NIRCA. It's a culmination of my 20 plus years of personal growth. Probably, 700 different books that I've already read. All that wealth of information that I have gathered and garnered in my head over that period of time is also poured out in the pages of this book. And the same thing with these guys, right? Rob and his dad. They have been going around now on a speaking tour for, over probably 15 years, 14 years. He started right after he got out of the military with his dad in this company, sharing all that, right? So you learn a lot about the mind. I love reading about the mind because to me it is so fascinating. You're shortcutting a lot of what otherwise could be trying to figure this out on your own path, right? So a book is going to give you shortcuts, especially if you're reading it in an area that you want to learn better. What does the cookbook do, right? Cookbook is something you don't have to go and try and make that cake 1,000 times before you finally get it right. The cookbook is going to give you a shortcut to getting you a delicious tasting cake. Boy, that sounds good right now. I'll tell you what. It's going to give you a shortcut to making a delicious chocolate cake or whatever the cake may be, cheesecake, so you don't have to go through that challenge of making all the mistakes to figure out how to get that cake just right. That's what a good book does. A good book's going to give you shortcuts, right? It's going to give you wisdom, increased wisdom to be able to make better decisions and better choices in your life because you can learn from others' mistakes. It builds your creativity. It deepens your thought process. It activates other areas of your mind, as we already talked about. And then it gives you energy and gives you movement. There was another statistic that I had down here somewhere that said that people that read before they go to bed at some point, and that's what I've been doing again. I'm not watching a lot of TV. Elka's been gone for 2 months now. I've been on my own, got my broken knee the whole time. But so that's one of the reasons why I really got back into the reading again. I'm so glad that I did. But I've been doing a lot more reading at night. I sit down about an hour before I know I'm going to bed. I don't want to read right up until the point I go to bed, but up to about 15 minutes. So I'll get in a good 30, 45 minutes of reading or something like that. Then I will get myself ready for bed. I get myself into bed. And then a lot of times what I'll do is I'll read a few pages from As a Man Thinketh. This, before you go to sleep, is not a bad idea. All right, so I'll read a page or two, and then I use my sleep spray right here, little plug, and then I'll turn off the light, and boom, I'm out. And I get a very, very good night's sleep. So that is another statistic out there on the advantages of reading. I really encourage, if you're a parent, start reading to your kids. Get them interested in reading in some way. The stats don't lie. We know for a fact it's going to help them throughout the rest of their lives if you can get them interested in reading. And then for us, start out. Danya talked about this, a great way if you're not a reader, this is how I got started. Again, you find a book, if it's 200 pages long or so, divide it by 30 days in a month, it's going to give you 6-7 pages a day to read. Who cannot set enough time? I'll tell you what, have the book next to the John, right? And when you do your morning session, pull it out and read a couple pages, all right? Do something productive with that otherwise somewhat non-productive time. Well, I guess it's productive. Anyway, I'm kidding, of course, but maybe not, all right? Find places where you can read 5 to 7, 10 pages a day. Another way, Orrin Woodward is another great mentor that I learned a lot from, and he said 15 minutes a day. So you schedule it into your day. Pre-plan 15 minutes a day for your reading time. However you want to do it, I encourage you to get on a reading plan. I would fall asleep. I was narcoleptic whenever I read, literally. So I would read, the way I got started, I would force myself to read a page or two a day. And if I dozed off, I put the book away and then I come back. And it's like anything else. It becomes a habit and you start increasing your aptitude in that skill, because reading is a skill. And we're not doing enough of it in America, as all those stats showed. So I appreciate you all for tuning in. Can't wait to go through the comments. And again, I wish you all a very blessed day, and we'll see you again on Thursday. You have a great one. Bye-bye.